Welcome to the podcast where sustainability gets real. I'm Alan Stenson, I'm your host, and in each episode we uncover the people, ideas and actions driving the journey to net zero. Let's get into it. Welcome back everyone to Mission Possible. This is a great opportunity to discuss all things to do with sustainability and anything and everything to do with the journey to net zero. We're looking at all sorts of different aspects around sustainability, and some of them will be quite left of field, some of them will be subject matters that you perhaps aren't necessarily aware of. So we're literally going to be covering everything over the course of coming episodes. Today I am absolutely delighted to have Robbie Mould from Mativus joining me today. Mativus is a creative digital agency that really helps to shift the way that we actually think about the internet, and not just as a tool for growth, but really as an area of emissions that we need to get to grips with. The team provides low carbon web design, digital strategy and sustainably led innovations. And today we're going to be unpacking some of the I'd like to say often overlooked impacts of running websites and digital platforms, as well as exploring some of the growing pressures that businesses are starting to see in terms of how and what they report on. So, Robbie, it's an absolute pleasure to have you on the show today.
Thank you, Alan. Yeah, looking forward to being on the pod.
Fabulous. So we're going to dive immediately into the deep end. And talk about what the sort of misconceptions are around the internet. It's perhaps not quite as clean as we would think. A lot of people would think, oh, it's online, it doesn't really have a footprint. But the reality is the internet is on par with aviation. I mean, it's around 3.7% of global emissions. So it's a much bigger impact than a lot of people think. And of course, it's growing significantly. What we're seeing now happening with regards to technology and online activity, it's only going in one direction. So it's really critical that we understand how to minimize the impact, because it is such a big part of everyone's life in terms of improving efficiency, making things much more productive. But so it's a tool that we need. But we obviously want to make sure that we're having the lowest possible impact of that. But before we jump into that, perhaps maybe give us a bit of an understanding about Mativus and how that came about.
Yeah, sure. So I've always been in web development. So ever since from school, college and university, I've come from a computer science and web development background. My degree at Kingston University was computer science mixed in with geography, which is a bit of an unusual mix, but it meant that I was an absolute whiz at Google Maps when it first came out and still am now. But where I've built the agency and where the sustainability focus comes in is really from my geographic and geography background, because I got my first job working at 1E, which created software to shut computers down when they were left on overnight, which obviously was a huge and it had a huge energy impact as well as cost impact, because we were, back then in late 2008, we were running predominantly on desktop. So my introduction to green energy or green technology really started from there. And then I got myself a job working for a data center company, EMC, that sold all the servers and storage and stuff for the big banks and big companies across the globe. And that's when you really see how much energy is not only used to power the data center, the servers and the storage themselves, but all of the air conditioning, all of the peripheral side of technology, of infrastructure to power these data centers. And remarkably and understandably, with the likes of the large big banks, they've got these big data centers, which are their production houses, but they've got replicas of these data centers dotted around the country or even globally, just in case there is a half a second or a 1 second outage. And so not only have you got all of the energy to power the data centers in the main center, but you've got that replicated for sites that will probably barely be used, or they don't want them to ever be used. So when you combine that with my software development background, I was thinking when I set up my agency is, what can I do? I've always had a bit of a sustainability understanding and wanting to do something. But of course, as you said in the intro, Alan, that people just don't assume, because you don't see, smoke coming out of the back of a computer. Well, hopefully you don't anyway, or a data center. You assume there's no carbon emissions. But when you look at the power to power these data centers, the air conditioning, cooling, but also the infrastructure, the Wi-Fi, the network, the computers, the phones, all of that kind of stuff, and then you combine all of that together, you can then start seeing, wow, okay, this is going to have a major impact. So I started my agency really focused on sustainable web design, just so that I can have something to do my bit and champion what the industry can and should be doing.
Yeah, I mean, it's a fascinating topic, and you're right. It's one that I think most people wouldn't necessarily be aware of where that impact is coming from. I mean, what would you say contributes most? Is it the infrastructure itself, or the data centers, the running of those, cooling of those, or the design blow, or what would you say are the big sort of drivers of that?
Yeah, so the biggest driver is, of course, the data centers, and especially where I am in Dubai. The cooling for these data centers, because they can only be a couple of degrees, the environment or data center they're in can only be a couple of degrees centigrade. Otherwise, these servers would just start overheating and start failing and what have you. So at the moment, it's 47 degrees over here in Dubai. So you can imagine a data center that's stuck out in the desert, sat in the heat, in the midday heat, how much air conditioning and cooling is needed to keep that data center inside to 4 degrees. And of course, there are sustainable design materials and stuff like that, but you still need a lot of aircon. So that's where the biggest focus is on. And then also you look to see how those data centers are being powered. So at the moment, majority of them are being powered by fossil fuels, as you would imagine. But the industry is starting to take action, and you're starting to see data centers pop up in the UK or in the Arctic Circle, for example, that are being powered by sustainable energy sources. So they may have their own wind farm. They may be powered by solar panels. Of course, there is innovation around sustainable building materials and what have you, but the majority of these data centers are powered by fossil fuels. And so what the industry is starting to act upon since that report, really, and that 3.7 figure that you mentioned at the start, that was taken a few years ago, before everyone started using ChatGPT and Teams, Zoom, and everything else, and even how we're recording this podcast.
That's exactly a key aspect of like how we're progressing and the rate at which we're progressing. I mean, a single AI agent being created is something like the equivalent of driving 1 million miles in a standard petrol car. I mean, it's mind-boggling, and it's only becoming bigger.
Absolutely,
it's the one major emissions driver that's absolutely going to be increasing. Just because we've all engaged in this so much, and we need it. It's innovation, it's improving efficiencies, it's productivity, it's accessibility and connectivity. But there is an impact to that.
Yeah, absolutely. But the good news is that the industry is fighting back, as I said. So there's lots of innovation happening around these data center providers. So you think of the big boys, the Amazon Web Services, the Microsofts, the IBMs, etc. What they're doing is they're investing heavily into sustainable energy sources. So a lot of them are starting to build wind farms, for example, solar farms. But where the real innovation, the real exciting stuff is happening is things in, for example, Iceland and the Arctic Circle, where temperatures obviously in the winter are incredibly low. So they can literally just suck out fresh air from the outside of these sensors and just feed that into these data centers, and that's your cooling. So of course that's incredibly sustainable, very energy efficient. So there is things happening, but that 3.7% is only going to grow. Even if we do get, even if every data center does get to sustainable energy sources, obviously we can't fully rely on it at the moment to power these data centers. But it's only going to get worse, and the more people that highlight it, like yourselves and myself and people in the industry, then the more aware people will be of their digital habits, and hopefully then more we can take action as well.
Yeah, absolutely. And there is so much happening, which is exciting. But you're right; it's going to take some time, and it's going to require a greater level of awareness, so that everyone contributing to it is doing so with their eyes open and knowing exactly what the implications are of their actions. Because previously, even just a few years back, people would have assumed that there isn't really an impact because it's all online. But yeah, I mean, we're seeing data centers now being created under the ocean. I mean, literally, submerged data centers where that cooling isn't an issue. I mean, we're also seeing retrofitting to data centers where the extraction of the heat is then being used to power the building in terms of hot water and heating. So all sorts of different innovations which are going to be really key to making sure that we do this and grow in the way that we need to grow, but we're decoupling carbon emissions from that economic growth. And we're doing what we need to do and becoming as successful as possible, but just doing it with the lowest possible impact, which is key. In terms of websites themselves, I mean, explain maybe what factors like hosting and file sizes and third-party scripts and all that, how does that impact energy usage?
Yeah, so this is where individual companies can significantly reduce their own impact or significantly reduce their own contribution to the impact of the internet on carbon emissions. So if you think about it, every website has some kind of CMS or content management system. WordPress is one that's very familiar with most. It's 40-50% of the internet. And each of those content management systems has their own database with all the files, all the images, all the content to power your website. And generally, if you want to get something that's very highly performant, i.e. speed, downloads fast, it's good user experience. Now, the best practice to have is to have your own server sat in a data center somewhere, whirling along, so they can emit, so we can send all the data and give all the information you want your customers to know about your business for obvious reasons. But the challenge with that is that, of course, it's very inefficient, because most WordPress websites, they're built to serve everyone and anyone. So whether you're an e-commerce company, whether you're a financial institution, or whether you are a small agency with a handful of users, everyone is given the same base files for this WordPress site. And because it was built originally 20, 30 years ago, using a very old technology, and they are looking to move that on. With all technology and engineering, it's very inefficient. So what we are trying to do is trying to consolidate as much of those WordPress content management systems, so that people don't have to have them on an individual server to get high performance, is consolidate them all together and separate that front end, which is what you actually see in the browser. And then so you can then have a very lightweight version of your website replicated across multiple servers across the globe. And it means that if someone is accessing your website in Sydney, they just need to go to the Sydney server, or if they're accessing it from California, for example, they'll go to the San Francisco server, for example. And that's a much more efficient way and sustainable way of running and managing a website. So if you are a business owner that has, you've got a big WordPress website that is you're churning up lots of resources just to sit there, even when people aren't using it, then this is an alternative way to go, okay, well, maybe this is a better approach if I want to reduce the amount of resources and energy that's actually powering my website.
Oh, wow. It's fascinating, isn't it? Because, I mean, you hear things like the online activity where it's, factoring in people from all over the world.
Yeah.
That's when Ronaldo posts on Instagram, and people are engaging with that from all over the world. I mean, that alone has a very significant impact to the website emissions. And in terms of when you're looking at building a sustainable website, that sustainable web build, if you run that as a comparison to a standard build, how much of a carbon saving is possible, per site visit, for instance?
Yeah. So if you there's lots of research on there. I'm definitely not a pioneer in sustainable web design. I've taken it on board and I've really accelerated it and focused our business on achieving those core principles for all of our customers. But when you look at it, it's about just being really aware of, do I have the essential functionality needed on the website, or have I got lots of plugins or unnecessary functionality on my site that's just never going to be used? You may have thought once, I'd love to sell some NCZ t-shirts and merch and stuff like that, and I've initiated that very powerful e-commerce plugin. But if you're never going to sell that for whatever reason, then it's just a case of switching it off and disabling it, because the amount of code that's required for an e-commerce functionality is quite significant. So it's first of all just making sure that everything that you have on your website is absolutely essential. So you have blog posts on there that has got no purpose? They were built maybe 5 or 6 years ago. Probably, I don't know what topic it may have been about, but something that's completely irrelevant. Do you have lots of pictures from there from the 2010 Christmas party, for example, that you probably don't want people to see anymore? It's removing all of that. But crucially, it's working with your web designer to make sure that they're creating the site to exactly how you want it to be. Now we still want people to have large, really useful, content-rich websites, because if you look at the core principles of marketing and the buyer's journey now, people are making 80% of their purchase decision prior to even speaking to you. So whether that's looking at your website, looking at social media and what have you. So we don't want to discourage that by any stretch of the imagination. What we just say is, look, make sure that we've got the core features on there. You've got all the core information that you want. You still have the capability to build as many pages or as many blogs or as much content as you want, but you know that the carbon footprint of each of those pages is significantly lower than if you had done it prior to thinking about a sustainable website, the sustainable web design principles.
Yeah, I mean, we went through the same process ourselves, as you know, and when we looked at what we had previously and then what we did to enable us to have a certified low carbon website, I think it kind of alleviated any of the concerns, which I think naturally people will have. It's like, well, if I have a green website, for instance, can I still have the things that I want to have on there? Is it still going to look as good? Are pictures going to load as well? All these different aspects. And it wasn't really until we went into that detail as to what needs to change, and it isn't necessarily, it's not even about restricting or stopping things from happening. It's just changing the way that we're doing them so that they run more efficiently, and the end result, the user experience, is exactly the same. It's exactly how you want it to be, and in fact, in some cases, even better, because you're showing what you're doing, but doing it, and you can shout about how credibly you're doing that with a low impact. I mean, do you find that a lot, where people are sort of, because I think we spoke about different visuals, that you don't have to have the same file size, because if it's being optimized for a mobile, for instance, you don't have to have the same as you would on a desktop, for instance. So it's the small things like that.
Absolutely, 100%. So that's where the clever technology has come out from these web development libraries and frameworks. Is you have got the capability now for it to recognize what device the user is accessing your website on. So, for example, you can have one large background image of your team, for example. If you've got 1,000 people, you've probably got a large image that has your whole team on there. And if you're on a 4K 27-inch screen, then you want to now show to your users on your website that high resolution image. And that's a conscious decision to say, yes, I'm happy to do that. But if you're looking on an iPhone SE, you don't need to display that high res 4K image. You can have a 360p image, because people aren't going to need to see that level of detail. It's not going to impact the visual appeal of your website. So that's where these website tools can be really clever and say, right, if it's on an iPhone SE, download the low res image. But if it's on a 4K 27-inch screen, download the high res image. And there's lots of different web compression technologies out there. So the first bit of advice I always say is double check your images on your site to make sure they're not just PNGs or JPEGs, which is what we often download in Canva, what have you. There are compression technologies called AVIF or WebP, which significantly compress the image. They strip out all of the metadata of an image, but they don't lose the quality. And that's the first starting point there as well. And there's obviously automated tools now that you can convert a PNG to those type of image formats automatically, but it's something that someone can do straight after this podcast and save themselves a few grams of carbon each page view.
Yeah, brilliant. I mean, what are sort of key go-to tips for businesses in terms of, things that are easily or hopefully fairly easy to implement, like choosing the right hosting provider and, as you said, compressing media assets and things like that. But what are some sort of key tips that businesses can take away today?
Yeah, so there's loads out there. So the Green Web Foundation, they're a non-for-profit organisation based over in Netherlands. And what they're doing is that they are auditing all of the key data center providers that are have got some sustainability claims. And they go through a vetting process, which looks at their energy sources and their sustainability policies, etc. And they've got a really good green website hosting checker. So you just plug in your website URL. It then does a search on your hosting provider, assuming it can find it, and then it will tell you how green, based upon their claims, that hosting provider is. So that's a really, and obviously they champion the greenest data centers, in the globe and what have you. So that's a really, really good starting point. So yeah, and if you have got a small website, it's very easy to migrate from a non-green hosting server to a green hosting server. Right. Yeah, obviously there's partners and agencies out there that can help you do that. So that's definitely the key point, because that's really what we're trying to champion, is say, look, if you're going to do anything, just move to a green hosting provider, because that's the biggest wins that the industry can really make. And if we see more and more people do that, then the big hosting providers are only going to accelerate their change or their transformation to implement these sustainable energy sources. So that's the first thing. Then there's a number of carbon calculators just for your website. So we have one where you plug in your website URL again, and then it analyzes all of your pages on your website, and then it measures the data transferred from your hosting provider to the browser in kilobytes or megabytes. And then there are some very clever calculations by the Green Web Foundation that can calculate or estimate how much emissions are used in order to transfer that or to view that homepage on someone's browser.
Brilliant. That's fantastic. Yeah. And are you seeing, I mean, what are the steps being taken for the awareness gap? I mean, who would you say is responsible for web emissions? Is it something that we should be implementing ourselves? Is it more down to the web hosting companies, or or in terms of how we digitally develop our own tools? Where do you see that responsibility lying?
With everything, I think with sustainability, it's a joint effort. We're seeing that with cars. Arguably Elon Musk was the pioneer when it came to electric vehicles. He made them cool eventually, and then the demand has increased as a result of owning a cool car. And so now you're seeing the other manufacturers catching up because the demand is there now from the consumer. So it's a bit of a chicken and egg scenario. What we would obviously love to see is businesses, website managers, marketing managers, or even the sustainability managers putting pressure or encouraging the CMOs and the CTOs of this world to say, no, this is really important for our company to make our website or all of our digital tools as sustainable and as eco-friendly as they can possibly be. So I think if we can get those stakeholders within the business to encourage or put pressure, that's only going to then increase the demand. And then naturally, the suppliers, the Microsoft, the Googles, the IBMs, the Amazon of this world, they're only going to catch up and then really take the leap forward that we all need.
Yeah, absolutely. And as well as that, I would say that, organisations like NCZ have a responsibility to raise awareness and ensure that, businesses understand the impact of their activity. We've got involved in so many different types of carbon reporting, down to the submission of a tender for a particular contract, and looking at the emissions associated with all of the activity that's gone into the work that creates that tender in the first place. So the number of emails that have been sent, the number of emails with attachments, because obviously there's a very different impact to that, Teams meetings, as well as the standard sort of, travel and, site visits and all that sort of stuff. So I think it's, as you said, it's a very collaborative approach to making sure that there's proper awareness, and then people can target it. If the CTO is saying, look, this is a significant portion of our footprint as a business, and it is something we rely on to run as we run, we therefore need to lead the way and demonstrate that we're doing it responsibly.
Definitely. Just on that, the thank you emails, or the noted emails, they're the biggest waste of energy resources. So lots of people are saying thank you to an email or what have you for taking an action and what have you. Yeah, if you think about all of those thank you emails, you could save a considerable amount of energy. And even saying thank you to AI, I think people are getting paranoid that the robots are going to take over the world in the distant future. So those ones who are polite, especially us Brits, think that we're going to have an upper hand. But no, you definitely don't need to say thank you to your AI agent or to ChatGPT.
Yeah, the answer to all of our sustainability issues is just be as rude as possible, because very short and concise.
Exactly. You're saving the planet, so it's fine to be rude.
Exactly. Yeah. And what other sort of misconceptions are you seeing? I mean, is it as simple, or are you seeing businesses thinking, well, we'll just switch to a green hosting company and therefore it's job done? Or are we seeing there's a greater level of understanding and sort of appetite to take action?
Yeah. I think what companies are looking for, what our customers are looking for, is that they want something that's tangible and visible, that they can show to their stakeholders, to their customers, that they are doing the right thing. And unless you are a bricks and mortar company, the website is still your shop window for majority of your customers. And so often a carbon reduction plan or an ESG initiative, that's kind of just shoved at the back of the website under the about. You have to go to the about menu and sort of look at ESG or about us or what have you, and it's kind of tucked away there. But actually, when it comes to a sustainable website and you've gone through that process and you've maximized your savings, just having something, a little widget at the bottom right hand side of the site or something in your navigation bar and what have you to say that this is a eco-friendly or a sustainable website, that's the first tangible and visible thing that you can show to your customers that you are actually doing the right thing. And actually an eco-friendly or a sustainable website is quite unusual still. Like, it's not in the zeitgeist of most people. So, and something that looks unusual is often more intriguing. So again, that will often hook your customers and go, oh, okay, right, I never thought about that. And actually, these guys are clearly, thinking in the right thing, and they're trying to get ahead of their competition, right?
It's powerful messaging. I mean, it's before anyone's had a single conversation. If they've looked at you and then they can see, oh, okay, these guys are actually serious about their claims. You know, even their website is low carbon.
Yeah, exactly.
You know, it's a good messaging. So I think arguably it's a very, very strong marketing tool. But it's absolutely fascinating. In terms of going back to geography and where you're based over in Dubai. How are you seeing that aspect of business change? Are you feeling that there's growing expectation now for businesses based over there to report on their footprint, or certainly more so than before?
Yeah, I think certainly so. Since COP28 over here in the UAE, certainly from the government perspective, there is a huge drive to be the first to achieve net zero by a certain time period. And obviously we all want to accelerate that further. But certainly that's being driven, and not only through desire and vision, but also coming through legislation. And we all know as business owners, the best thing to motivate us or to drive us to take action is a big stick and a big wad of legislation to sit on to come on our desks. So that's where it's really driving. So companies are being encouraged, enforced to report on their carbon footprint. Of course, how you help your customers, I'm sure, Alan, is that there are big ticket items. But certainly when it comes to the smaller businesses that maybe don't have a logistics part to their business, or they don't have big warehouses or big office buildings, certainly those smaller companies that are working from home or working remotely, or those digital companies, the website is probably their biggest area, but they can report on and also hope to make it as efficient as possible. So certainly in the UAE, all companies, as far as we're aware at the time of recording, are going to be asked to report on their carbon footprint. That's coming through from legislation. So that's just only going to encourage every business owner over here in Dubai to want to and need to take action. And until other countries catch up with that, then everyone's going to sort of lag behind the UAE at the moment.
Yeah, we're certainly seeing a significant uptick now in the appetite to engage. It's like anything. I mean, legislation will capture X number of businesses of a certain size and so on, and then invariably, in the medium term, that the net is going to increase, and there's going to be more and more organisations captured within that. However, I think one of the things that moves the market significantly faster than that is where the expectation on supply partners is increasing. So a company A who has to adhere to various different types of legislation, or has any sort of mandatory requirement to report on their footprint, they're of course going to be looking at their footprint thinking, well, hang on a second, 80+% of my footprint's in the supply chain. I'm not going to get anywhere near net zero unless I engage with my suppliers. So that then means, okay, supplier A, if you want to work with us, we need to know what the impact is, because when we engage with you, that's our footprint. So I need to know the impact of the decision that I'm about to make. Is it this company or that company? And I'm going to at some point go, well, price, is one thing, but what's the cost of doing business? So if that company can demonstrate, well, you're spending X amount of money with us, but actually we're comparatively, very efficient, and we will help to reduce your footprint just by you buying from us, then that's a huge benefit to everyone involved. So I think that's clearly what's going to drive the market even faster. But it is good to see the UAE really accelerating things now. Typical UAE fashion, I think it's going to want to be the biggest and the best and the fastest.
Absolutely,
So there's a lot to do, but it's very encouraging to see a lot is happening out there. So that's great. And
do you think people will eventually have like a carbon emissions bookkeeper equivalent from what you're seeing in the industry? Could you eventually see that happen, where like I have to track every transaction and reconcile everything that goes through the bank account? Is that something you're seeing?
It's going to. I think we're a little way off that. Or probably I wouldn't say a long way off that, but we are we're certainly going in that direction because
Mm-hmm.
What's going to end up happening is because there's no one size fits all and a strict categorization of everything. Then every business is different, and it's difficult to sort of mandate something across the board. Certainly, we're already seeing, certainly in the UK, mandatory greenhouse gas reporting for companies of a certain size. We've got things like SECR, which is streamlined energy carbon reporting. Companies of a certain size have to report on that as often as they do with their accounts, and in fact, it goes in as a director's report within their accounts. So we're already moving in that direction, and I think eventually the cost of carbon will factor into every transaction, every business decision, and it has to. And I think eventually that will be it will start as that differentiator. The companies and the service providers that are giving that support and making their customers look good just by buying from them because they're literally helping them reduce their footprint by utilizing that service, that's going to become the norm, and that's going to become the next level of expectation. So and we're already starting to see those kind of questions now ramping up. Tenders are 6, 7, 8 pages in a tender document around ESG, and it's 30+% of the score. So it's a very different environment to even just a few years ago. So it's definitely going in that direction, and the companies that are embracing that change and making it part of how they operate and part of the value that they provide will be the companies that are the most successful companies moving forward. And then that will just shift the market, and everyone will realize, okay, we all need to be doing this. So it's only going in one direction. But I mean, have you got any sort of examples of something that you've done with a client to help them improve an aspect of their footprint, obviously from an internet or website perspective?
Yeah, absolutely. So we've got a facilities management company based in the UK that had a traditional WordPress website. It was a very large website. They had lots of pages on there. They had different functionality where customers could log in to their website to download all of their reports and what have you. And we've actually significantly slashed the carbon emissions of that website by 75%. So the first thing that we did was, well, I've said it before, we put it onto a green hosting provider, first of all, still in the UK, because obviously one of the things with hosting providers, especially if you've got customer data or any sort of data, is they need to adhere to data protection laws or GDPR laws as well. So that does complicate things at the moment, and that's why we're really urging data centers in the UK in particular to really push the sustainable initiatives, so that UK people aren't left behind or compared to the European counterparts. So that was the first thing. So that you move that away, but we also just got rid of all of those unused SEO pages that were not even being found on Google. They were built for it as SEO pages, but they were just never being found at all. So we slashed all of those, we consolidated it all together, and actually as a result of that, not only is there a sustainability benefit because you're getting rid of unused stuff, Google is now super aware of exactly what this company is doing and the locations and the services they can provide, and actually now seeing their SEO rankings increase significantly as well. So that's obviously another business benefit to working with an agency, like ourselves or whoever, is I want to be sustainable, but also I actually want to drive business. I actually want to make my website an asset and profitable, and that's one of the first things you can significantly do, as well as all of the image side of things, the compression technologies, and made it very fast and super quick as well. So again, if you build an efficient website, then your users are only going to get a much better user experience. And again, if you have a website that loads slowly, one, it's going to cost the planet, but two, it's going to cost you in terms of losing that traffic and conversion. So, as an example, if you test how long your website takes to load, and if it's more than 5 seconds, then you'll lose 60% of your traffic. Especially if you're doing paid advertising or paid Google ads, for example. Google will charge you if they click on your ad, but your website takes forever to load and the user just gets bored, Google's still going to charge you. So that's also a benefit for going down the sustainable and efficient route as well. So yeah, we've helped that company achieve all of that, slash their emissions by 75%. And they're really starting to get the payback from all their advertising and business development they're doing, with activities through the website.
Yeah, fab. That's excellent, and it is part of that sort of hidden aspect of pretty much every business out there will have an online activity or footprint from their online activity or their website. So incorporating it into that scope 3 reporting aspect, I think, is going to be pretty key, and really help those businesses out there that are struggling to understand. First of all, what the footprint is, and secondly, what can be done about it. In terms of key takeaways from you, what one thing should every business ask of their digital agency?
Well, first of all, is to go onto the Green Web Foundation, have a look at whether their website is hosted on green servers. And then for everyone to use one of the carbon calculator emissions tools. So we have one ourselves. So you can access it through emissions.mativus.com, and it will do a full audit on your site, and it will tell you the carbon emissions for every single page on your website. And then you can then order it to say, right, okay, my blog pages are the most highly emitted or most impactful, so I'm gonna target those and get rid of those blog pages that have never been read, or some dodgy Christmas photos on there, or whatever, Christmas party photos and stuff. Get rid of those. So they're the two key takeaways. And I think as long as customers or people are just aware of it, then obviously they can take action from there. But they're the two key things to take away from this.
Fab. No, that's excellent. And where, in your opinion, where do you see digital sustainability heading in the next sort of 3 to 5 years?
I think it's really, really encouraging and really, really positive. Yes, there are concerns around AI and the amount of infrastructure and resources that's used. And I think if we're not almost at 75% usage in terms of people actively using it on a daily or weekly basis, I'd be really surprised if the utilization rate isn't as high as that already in 2025. But I think it's only going to be positive. And I think people like ourselves that are talking about it, raising that awareness, and it becoming more easily available in terms of the investment being put in to power sustainably and find alternative energy sources, then I think it's only going to be a positive impact. But I think people, first of all, just got to be aware of their digital usage and make sure that they're not just wasting energy with laptops being left on, or monitors, or old websites that were fired up 5 years ago for a test and now never been used, but they're just whirling away in the background. It's those little things that, if everyone does it together, is obviously going to have a huge impact. And again, the more demand of wanting to have data, have your systems, your websites, applications on data centers which are powered sustainably, then everyone will eventually catch up, because the demand is obviously going to be there.
Yeah, absolutely. What one thing would you absolutely outlaw in terms of website design from a sustainability standpoint?
I would say videos that are longer on your, this is on your website, longer than 10-15 minutes. Because unless it's a really good podcast or video that that you get lots of engagement for, more often than not, that takes a considerable amount of resources on your site. And so if that's just literally just sat in the background, buried away in the bottom of a blog that no one is looking at, get rid of that. Put that on YouTube, because they have got some phenomenal compression and deduplication technologies which significantly reduce the amount of resources needed to power that video. But if you've just got streams and streams and streams of video on there that's more than 15 minutes long, it's never been watched, and you can see from the data it's never been watched, just get rid of that and you'll considerably shrink your website down.
Oh, awesome.
and unused plugins as well. Those
Right.
e-commerce plugins that you thought you could sell some t-shirts on, just get rid of those.
Right. Okay. Perfect. And finally, any sort of green web trends that we need to get excited about?
The biggest trend at the moment is having a button on your website that if you haven't already adhered to the sustainable web design principles, for whatever reason, you've invested quite heavily in the design, it's really important for you to have that certain functionality on your website for whatever reason, is you can just have a switch that basically is user accessed. They control that they want to see the low carbon version, and it will then just strip away all of that unnecessary functionality. But if the user feels they need to have it back on for whatever purpose, then they can literally just access it there and then. I think that's a really, really good starting point if businesses don't want to go through the motions of rebuilding the website. I know how long and how long that can take for businesses, especially at a certain size. So that's a really, really quick win for companies to implement.
Oh, I love that. Fabulous. Thanks for listening to Emission Possible. If today's episode sparked an idea or presented a challenge, please reach out and let us know. Subscribe, share, and stay tuned, because net zero is absolutely possible.